It was meant to be another grand handshake moment. President Donald Trump thought his recent phone call with Vladimir Putin was a good start and he wanted to meet with him in person in Budapest. But 5 days later, that plan's gone. Replaced instead by a sweeping round of sanctions on Russia's biggest oil giants. Inside the White House, the shift was sudden but not entirely surprising. Trump, once eager to cast himself as a deal maker who could end the war in 24 hours, found himself frustrated again. The good conversations with Putin, as he called them, simply went nowhere. Officials say Trump scrapped the Budapest meeting after realizing Putin's position hadn't budged since their Alaska summit months ago.
I don't know that they will. I think that they'll certainly have an impact. They're massive sanctions. It's sanctions on oil. The two biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll push... hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. You know, it takes two to tango, as they say, and we're going to find out. They hate each other. These two people hate each other. You know that better than anybody, and it makes it more difficult than it should be.
No ceasefire, no concessions. Just the same demands. Ukraine must surrender the Donbass, disarm and abandon NATO dreams. The breaking point came soon after a deadly Russian strike on a kindergarten in Kharkiv, an image that reportedly infuriated the president. Hours later, Trump met his Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and signed off on sanctions that stunned even his inner circle. Within hours, Rosneft and Lukoil, Russia's two biggest oil producers, were cut off from the US-led financial system. The penalties bar not just Russian companies but also any third parties dealing with them, like India and China. The White House hopes this will drain Moscow's coffers and force Putin towards the negotiating table. Oil and gas fund nearly a fifth of Russia's economy. The timing couldn't be worse for Moscow. Oil prices have dropped nearly 20% this year. Inflation is soaring nearly 10% and recruiting bonuses for soldiers are bleeding the budget dry. But economic pain rarely translates into political surrender. Even before Washington's sanctions hit, the Kremlin repeated its old line. Its goals in Ukraine remain unchanged. In Moscow, Putin shrugged off the move as an unfriendly act that would cause some losses but no major damage.
And they will have certain consequences, but still they will not significantly affect our economic well-being.
He warned that any US strike using the long-range Tomahawks Ukraine wants would trigger a very strong response. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who just days earlier left Washington empty-handed after asking for Tomahawk missiles, called the sanctions a good signal.
We had more than 2 hours conversation on different topics with a lot of details. Yes, I think the most important details what we spoke about, how to defend ourselves, how to have unity and security guarantees, and the place of the United States, which is important in security guarantees for the future of Ukraine, and how now to go to political decisions.
Trump's sanctions package was his first major strike against Moscow since returning to the White House, and a U-turn from his months-long effort to coax Putin into summits and soft diplomacy. In January, Trump said he would only consider sanctions if Europe first stopped buying Russian energy. By October, with Europe already cutting its imports and Russia refusing to stop bombing civilians, he changed course completely. For now, the Budapest summit is shelved. Putin insists talks are still possible with proper preparation, while his aides brand the US sanctions an act of war.
Of course, this is an unfriendly act towards Russia. This is an obvious thing. And it does not strengthen Russian-American relations, which have just begun to recover. Of course, with such actions, the US administration damages Russian-American relations.
Trump, meanwhile, says he's open to meeting Putin again when there's something real to talk about.
and frankly both sides of this war. And he's always said in order to negotiate a good peace deal, both sides need to be interested in a good peace deal. And he feels as though, unfortunately, from the Russian side as of late, he has not seen enough interest and enough action in terms of moving the ball forward towards peace. A meeting between these two leaders is not completely off the table. I think the president and the entire administration hopes that one day that can happen again, but we want to make sure that there's a tangible, positive outcome out of that meeting.
But the truth is starker. Neither men have changed. Putin won't back down, and Trump cannot sell another failed peace attempt.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.